You going?
Not yet. She didn't start it yet.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Office of Sustainability, Keeping Sustainability Alive Inside, our virtual series. We're really excited to be here today to celebrate World Oceans Week and all of the magical things that the oceans bring us. So welcome and thank you for joining. My name is Meredith McDermott. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the Department of Education. A little known fact is that I also am a marine biologist. I started out as a marine biologist really because I love the ocean. I love sharks, I love whales, I love fish, I love all of the little creatures. I even love the plants inside the ocean. So this is an especially important topic for me personally. It's something that I've loved my whole life and really have been waiting for a time to be able to talk to all of you about all of the creatures and the really just amazing things that are all around us. Even if we don't live by it, it still impacts us. And it's something that World Oceans Day and World Oceans Week helps to celebrate. So thank you for joining us. We've got really great guests today. We're going to have some fun today. We're kind of mixing some things up. We've got students who are going to be joining us. They're going to be doing a really great activity. We also have a really fantastic photographer who is going to not only, talk to us about like the science and things of the ocean, but really using images and beautiful photographs to really talk through, what can you see in the ocean and what does that actually mean to you? We're all sitting here, most of us are sitting here in New York City, and you may or may not feel connected to the ocean. But the thing with the ocean is that it does impact all of us, and all of us are connected to it. So, we've got, you see on the screen here, you see some pictures of some of my adventures. This is just to show you, most people are used to seeing me maybe in a certain way. I'm maybe having to dress up a little bit for work, go to the office, but I've actually spent a lot of my life underwater. And a lot of people think, including some of my family and friends, they're kind of like, why are you so interested in this? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to put on all this gear and dive underwater and spend a whole lot of time down there? The real answer to that is that I really just love to explore. I love animals. I love being in environments that are maybe a little bit tricky. Maybe they're a little bit mysterious. To some people, they might be a little bit scary, but I find that some of the best way to learn is to really see and to do. And so I quite literally dive underwater. I dive right over the edge and just go right underwater. When I was 10 years old, I was born in California. When I was 10 years old, I asked my parents, I said, okay, what's next? I'm a swimmer. I was used to kind of being in the water. My parents kind of threw me in when I was a very young child, and I really wanted to take the next step. For me, the next step when I was 10 years old, which some of you might be younger. When I was 10 years old, I said, what can I do next? And that's when I started venturing into scuba diving. And I had a family friend take me out, maybe he shouldn't have, but took me out. I started exploring with a mask, with a snorkel. And then in these images that you see, years later, you see me diving underneath. That's actually a cave that I'm diving in that image on the left. And then you see an image of me probably looking a little crazy with all sorts of gear hanging off of me. But that's me kind of in my happy place. So I'm coming out of a dive. My hair is all tangled under that nice hood. The reason that you're seeing me with that thing over my head is because I was actually diving in Southern California then, and believe it or not, that water is actually quite cold. So I get cold underwater. I am not afraid to admit it. So I wear that hood, and it helps trap that body heat, much like wearing a winter hat does. So it helped keep me nice and toasty so that I could explore all of the creatures underwater. That bottom picture on the right-hand side with my pink snorkel, that is me in the mask. What I'm holding there is actually a baby horn shark. So I was actually taking around students that were about 12 or 13 years old, and we were just exploring in some of the rocky areas, again in Southern California. And you see all sorts of cool creatures. You see fish and little sharks, maybe some rays, but we also see cool things like sea anemones and sea cucumbers and sea urchins, those little spiny things that some of you might have seen before in real life or on TV. So that little horn shark it was about that big, not very big, and very, very gentle. So you never want to grab things out of their natural habitat. So I wasn't doing that. I just kind of lifted it off the ground, and I wanted to show the kids, hey, you know, if you take your 2 fingers, if anybody has ever learned about sharks or seen a shark, you probably haven't pet a shark before. Most people haven't pet sharks. But one thing that we like to do is sharks have really, really rough skin. It kind of feels like sandpaper. And so I like to kind of, again, that in-depth learning, taking our wet hands and just gently touching the shark's skin. It's a really cool way to kind of show people this thing isn't going to hurt you. And it's also got this very special body that helps it to really sense its environment, which makes it very well adapted to surviving in that environment, which we all have to do in one way or the other. You want to go to the next? So the one thing, I know that we've got some other shark enthusiasts that are going to be talking to you in just one second, but I wanted to share a few images that I actually took myself. So I took the 2 pictures that you see on the screen right there. Those are both of great white sharks, and those were taken off of an island called Guadalupe, which is in Baja, Mexico. It's just south of San Diego, California. I used to live in San Diego and had friends who did these trips down to Baja. If any of you have watched Shark Week on the Discovery Channel, one of the places that they go is Guadalupe Island. And so I was able to go on a boat with a bunch of other scientists and researchers, and I was able to spend about a week essentially entirely underwater. I had never seen a great white shark in real life, up close and personal. I've seen a lot of other sharks. I had never seen a great white. These are images that I took while being underwater, and yes, they were that close. No, these are not hyper zoomed. I'm still alive. I'm in one piece, and it was probably one of the greatest experiences of my entire life. So, you know, you learn not only about these really majestic creatures and how adapted they are to their feeding supply and hunting, and also the fact that they were very well aware that we were underwater with them, but we were not bothering them, and they never bothered us. They were not scared of us. I was not scared of them. And it was, again, one of the most incredible experiences, because it really just underlines that you really learn a lot about things when you are watching them and observing them and really interacting with them in their natural habitat. So I'm really, you know, excited to be able to kind of share these with you. I actually keep one of these photos framed on my desk at our office. People are kind of like, what? You took that? I did take that. The top image on the top left-hand side there, you probably see something. It's kind of hard to tell what that is. There's a bunch of barnacles that are covering it. It's actually a shipwreck. And you can't really see me, but if you can see some yellow fins, I'm actually one of the little things that's swimming right next to that shipwreck. That shipwreck was actually in the Maldives. It's a beautiful island nation in the Indian Ocean, very small, not too far from India. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that picture is of me. I've got the yellow fins on, and that's actually a harbor seal that was very, very interested in playing with my yellow fins. So that was also taken in California. So just wanted to share that I have this deep personal connection to all of the things that we're going to talk about today. And I invite you all to learn more about the oceans so that you too can help celebrate them and also help conserve these beautiful and also essential habitats. So thank you very much. We are going to share with you, again, we're really excited. This is, we've done several of these live events, and we're again celebrating World Oceans Day. So today we are going to be introduced to some very special people in very short order, and they are going to do a really great activity to make puppets that are the coolest animal on the planet, the sharks. So Debbie, thank you all, and students from from PS24, our Regional Enrichment Center. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves too, but really, really excited to have you here, and thank you so much for doing this for all of our participants today. Can't imagine anything greater than that. And then after Debbie and her students present, we are going to be very fortunate to see some of those great photographs by a professional photographer whose name is Ralph Pace. But up next, again, I want to welcome you all today, and I want to welcome and introduce Nichelle Hudlin from the Office of Sustainability. Nichelle is our Communications and Training Coordinator. She really holds a lot of things in our office together. So Nichelle, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Hi, how are you? As Meredith said, I am Nichelle Hudlin. I am the Communications and Training Coordinator here in the Office of Sustainability. Before we start our event, I wanted to run through a couple things before we move forward. So first, I would like to say that we have closed captioning available, which allows this event to be in any of the 7 languages, which are English, Spanish, Urdu, Haitian Creole, Russian, Arabic, and Chinese. So if you would like to view this event in any of those languages, click the CC box in the little corner of your screen, and you should be able to do so. Next. This event is being recorded right now, so we will send it to you in a couple days where you can share it with your students or your faculty, or if you just want to watch it over again, especially for the puppets, to see how to do it. Also, we're all friends here, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A for any questions for the speakers. Please use the Your Name section, and do not use the post anonymously. We want to know who you are. Like I said, we're all friends, so put your name and we'll answer your questions. So with great honor, I would like to introduce Debbie Varca. She is currently working out of PS24's Rec Center in Flushing, Queens. She is teaching kindergarten students. As some of you may know, the rec centers are also called Regional Enrichment Centers. They were created for children of essential workers where they can safely be cared for and educated. Debbie has been here since the beginning of the opening, which happened right after our city had gone on pause. She is also a former science teacher. She taught in the Bronx at PS 69 and PS 304. Recently, her students were curious about sharks, and as part of their programming and lessoning, she had them create shark puppets, and they posted it on Instagram, where I found it and thought it was the most amazing thing, and asked her, did she mind coming on and demonstrating this for our audience? So Debbie is here with her students to show us how to make shark puppets. Welcome, Debbie.
Wait. Is it okay?
Are we on?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Varca. This is my co-teacher, Miss Sophia. Today's Superhero Day, so we're all dressed as superheroes. And this is my student. This is Miguel. This is Rhea, and this is Sanav. They're all kindergarten students. And they came into the rec center, and one of the assignments that they had was to create nonfiction books. And one day they were a little unsure what to write about, so we came up with the idea of writing about sharks. And ever since they've started learning about sharks, they just wanted to learn more. I mean, we've done a lot of activities in our classroom, about the ocean, about the sharks. Guys, can you give me some shark facts? Rhea, give me a shark. Give me one shark.
There is a big shark, and it's the whale shark.
Is that the biggest shark in the ocean?
Yeah.
Wow. Can someone give me another shark fact, Miguel?
Sharks don't have bones. They have cartilage.
And what's cartilage, Miguel?
It's in our ears and our nose.
And what's special about it?
It flex
Yes, it's flexible. Anything else, Sanab? Can you give me a shark fact? How many different kinds of sharks are there? Do you remember?
440.
440. Tell them nice and loud.
There's 440 types of sharks.
And if you notice my kids' masks today, they look like sharks. They have shark teeth. So I hope they don't bite me. Now, we've done a lot of different activities. They actually created some three-dimensional sharks. I don't know if you can see them hanging from the classroom. And they made whale sharks and hammerheads. But today we're doing something fun. We're going to make shark puppets. And they're really pretty easy to make. The only thing you really need construction paper, scissors, and glue. And I have 3 different colors. We have blue. I cut out some red, some white, and some black. And they're really cute finger puppets. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a big sheet of construction paper, and I tell the kids to fold it like a hot dog. Yours is already folded. You could just, okay? All right? And then I'm going to fold it so each side meets. And it will look like this. And then I'm going to fold it, that's right, like a hot dog bun, that's right. And then I'm going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to take some glue, and I'm going to glue it together. Okay. Okay, so it looks like this. Then I'm going to take it, I'm going to fold it in half, like this. Fold this side like so. And then this side like so. And then we could put our fingers inside. And here we have a shark. What is he missing? What is our shark missing?
Eyes, pupils, and tongue, and its fin to swim.
Okay.
And its teeth.
So the first thing we're going to do, you take a sheet of white paper. Oops. You take a sheet of white paper, and I actually just cut it like zigzag to create jaws. And what you do is you fold them in half. All right. You actually just fold it so it has a little flap on either side. 2 of them. Okay. And then I'll take my glue stick on the side that's folded, not the ridgy side. And so now you can get started. Let's put the jaws in. And inside, we'll place the teeth. Okay, we'll place the shark's teeth. All right, guys? Okay, here we are. You okay, Miguel? Oh, what about his bottom teeth? He needs his bottom teeth. Can you put the bottom teeth in? Okay, so let's do both sides.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Your bottom teeth.
let's put the top and the bottom teeth in. Let me see, Miguel. Put your fingers in. Let's see how he looks. Okay, here we go. Let's put some more glue. Okay.
Stick it down. Did you put enough glue?
Okay,
Awesome.
and let's do this way, like this.
Good, Ria.
Let me see how you guys did. You're doing a great job. Okay. So let's see, do you have your shark teeth in? Does everyone have their teeth in? Okay, let me see. Good job. Okay, what should we put in next? What does he need now?
The eyes.
Before the eyes, let's finish the mouth. What should we put inside the mouth?
The tongue.
Okay, let's put the tongue, the red inside of the mouth. So actually 2 little rectangles that we'll put inside the mouth. So we'll put the glue on. And we'll glue it right into the inside of the mouth. Good job, Sanam.
So what shape are the teeth? What shape is that?
Triangles.
Triangle.
And what shape is the inside of the mouth?
A rectangle.
That's right. Good job. Okay, make sure you put a nice amount of glue so it stays. Okay. Ready, Miguel? Did you put glue? Lots of glue? Let me see. Oh, looking good, Ria. Let me see, Sanab. Okay, now, let me see your sharks. Let me see what they look like. Let me see.
Put your fingers in.
He still needs his eyes and
Okay.
fin.
That's right. So let's take, the fin is actually, I cut, it's actually 2 pieces shaped like this and you glue them together and then you create like a little flap. So it's easy to glue onto the top of the shark. So let's open up our fins. Okay. Good, Rhea, you're beating me. You're faster than I am. Good job, Rhea. So let's put on the shark's fin. You showed him, you did a good job. I love the way you're showing it. My stuff is falling apart. Did you get it on? Let's take the fin. Good job. Okay. All right, next, what I want you guys to do, what is he missing? What is he missing? Okay, but before, okay, so we're taking 2 shapes that kind of look like this, the eyes, and then we're going to add the pupils. So we cut the 2 little black circles for the pupils. So let's glue the pupils into the eyes.
What shape are the pupils?
What shape are the pupils, guys?
Circle.
Circles, that's right.
Well, yeah.
That's right.
Make sure you know your shapes, mister.
Okay. And now, show me your pupils. Everyone hold up your eyes. Hold up your eyes. Okay, what we're going to do, watch me. What do we have to do, Rhea?
Well, we have to fold.
That's right, we have to fold the bottom so we can put them on our shark. Okay, so let's fold them and let's glue them on.
Guys, I'm ready to fold them.
You're so good, Miguel. Thank you. Doing a great job. You're a real superhero. Okay.
Good job. Look at those sharks.
Let me see. We're almost done. You don't want to scare the audience, guys. You don't want to scare the
This is
audience.
not a real shark. It's just a puppet.
Ready? Okay. Up, Rhea, your eye fell off. Let's put it back on. Let's put it back on.
Like the teeth.
Okay, everyone, let's show our audience our finished shark puppet.
Wow.
Happy World Ocean Day.
Happy World
And say, save the sharks.
Save the sharks.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our video. Does anyone,
Yes.
if anyone has any questions for us.
I'm not doing it. I'm done. This sounds like goodbye.
Sit.
This sounds like should I ask questions?
Do we, so I have a question for you guys. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you, so thank you so much. That was really a lot of fun, and I personally think that that's the coolest puppet that I've ever seen. I also have to say that I love your classroom. I kind of want the background situation in my own house. I love that. So you guys have done such a great job. I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned the whale shark. So whale sharks are really big. They're really, really big. Do you guys have any idea, what do you guys think the whale shark eats? Do you know what they eat? They're really big.
Fish.
Fish? Okay, that's a really good, that's what most people think. A lot of people think big sharks, they must eat really big stuff, and a lot of sharks do. Whale sharks actually eat, they're the biggest fish in the ocean, but they eat the smallest stuff. They eat what's called plankton. Have you guys heard of plankton before?
No.
So it's little teeny tiny stuff. They can be animals, they can be plants. It's all stuff that's floating through the water. And all whale sharks do is they swim through the water, they keep their mouths open, and that little stuff just goes right in their mouth. So they literally swim with their mouth open so that they get as much food as they can, and they do it all the time because they're big, so they need a lot of energy, they need a lot of food, so that's why they're always swimming and eating basically all the time. So that's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it?
That's cool.
How big do you think a whale shark gets?
How big do you think the whale shark gets? What do you think, Sanab?
Yeah, you see it on before? It looked like a really big.
So you guys, how do some people get to school? So if their parents don't drive them, we take the subway here in New York City. You might take something that might be yellow. What is that thing called?
Bus.
A bus. So a good way to think about how big a whale shark can get, think of a school bus. They're pretty big, right? School buses are pretty big. Imagine that size. That's about the size of a whale shark. Whale sharks can be over 30 feet long, which is, I'm just under 6 feet tall. Think about that. I'm a pretty tall human. Think about how much bigger that is than I am. Imagine how much bigger that is than you are. That's a really big, that's a big shark. But yet they eat these little teeny tiny things. I don't know if we have any other, do we have any other questions from the audience that we want to ask?
Yes, so Meredith, I think these are geared more towards you. This is Pat, everybody. Hi, from the Office of Sustainability.
Hi, Pat.
Some people want to know if sharks eat other sharks.
You know, yeah, they can. They can. Do they typically? You know, not really, but certainly some aggressive sharks. So sharks that maybe have some temper to them. You guys might have seen things like bull sharks. Oftentimes, if you see a picture of a bull shark, they kind of look mean. Like they have that kind of, they have that face that just looks like you don't really want to mess with them. They can get a little nasty, and they're known to actually headbutt their prey. It's almost like, imagine somebody coming up to you and headbutting you. You're going to kind of get a little bit disoriented, kind of a little bit out of whack. And that's kind of what bull sharks do. It's kind of knock out their prey, and then they can pounce. You know, bull sharks don't necessarily eat each other. They don't necessarily cannibalize, but certainly sharks can eat each other. Sharks don't really provide a lot of the bigger sharks that you think of as being the big animal eaters. So, for example, great white. You know, eating another shark isn't often providing the energy, the density of energy that they want. So think about animals that have a lot of fat to them, a lot of blubber. So things like seals, things like sea lions, they have a really thick layer of fat. That thick layer of fat, it helps keeps those animals warm, but it also has a whole lot of nutritional value for an animal like a big shark. So they prefer to eat things like that. But at the end of the day, just like any animal, they'll make do with what they have around them, especially when they need to.
Okay. And Meredith, I think we have time for one more question for you before we transition. And then if there's other questions for Meredith, we can ask those at the end of the day. Yep. But how long did you stay underwater for when you were diving?
Oh, it varies. It kind of depends on how deep you're going. So if you're really, really shallow and say you're just diving along a coral reef, coral reefs are typically going to be in shallower depths. You know, they have lots of algae and plants in them, so they need the sunlight in order to function, right? They need to photosynthesize. So if I'm diving a coral reef and maybe doing some assessments of a coral reef's its health, how it looks, you know, maybe about 40 feet deep, you know, about. But I have been pretty deep before. I've been diving to depths of about 150 feet. So, for example, you guys remember that picture from the beginning where I was next to that shipwreck? That was in the Indian Ocean. We were way, way, way out in the middle of nowhere. So we were diving much, much deeper. So for that shipwreck, it was pretty deep. So I've been to depths of about 150 feet. That determines how long you can stay underwater. If I'm 30 feet, I could stay up there for probably 2 hours. If I'm diving really, really deep, it might be more about an hour dive. Maybe I have good lungs, so maybe an hour and 20 minutes per dive.
Great, thanks.
No, that's a great question. Good questions, guys. I know we'll have a lot, but we also have somebody else that I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for. I just want to say thank you so much to Debbie and all of you student participants and presenters. That was really, really fun. And I think we're going to all be making our own shark puppets, especially when we all come back together at our office. So thank you. I also wanted to offer to you guys, to Debbie, and students, I also wanted to offer, if you ever want to talk again, I would love to talk to you more about sharks sometime. So consider that an offer on the table. I'd love to talk with you guys more. So thank you so much again for doing this. Up next, I am really excited to not only have a pretty esteemed individual and professional, but also a friend. I have not seen Ralph in years, and when we were trying to think about what we could do to celebrate World Oceans Day, my friend Ralph Pace really popped into my mind first. Not only is he a scientist himself, he has done a degree at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, which is in San Diego. It's an amazing school, especially if you're interested in the ocean and ocean science, marine science. He is a marine conservationist, a marine ecologist, marine biologist. He's all of these things. So he's got a really great understanding of the ocean, of the animals that are in it. But perhaps even more importantly, he is intrigued by all of the sort of power of the oceans and the real beauty of it. And from a scientist perspective, really understood that oftentimes there can be a big gap between the science and people's general understanding. Not everybody is a scientist. Not everybody understands science. Not everybody is interested in science. And so when it comes to really important things like the oceans, it's really important that we think about these things in different ways, not just from one. So not just from the science, in order for more people to care about it enough to want to protect it. And so what Ralph has done is he started off as a scientist and he really kind of got that whole thing. How can I make more people understand that this thing is pretty incredible and we have to do a whole lot more to protect it? So Ralph, as a scientist, he's worked with sea turtles, he's worked with whales, he's worked with all sorts of sharks, fish, all over the world in different habitats, coral reefs, kelp forests, warm water, cold water, all over the place. He's had some of his photography and photojournalism featured in National Geographic, National Geographic Explorer, Smithsonian, Nature, Sport Diver, and a whole lot more. So Ralph Pace is an environmental photojournalist, and I'm going to introduce him so he can tell you what that is and just how cool it is to do. So Ralph, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to see you. And I'm going to kick it over to you, my friend.
Oh, hey, thank you guys. And thank you, Debbie. My kids were in the other room tuned in, learning how to make all those really cool sharks. Can you guys see that screen okay?
Ralph,
we can see you, Ralph.
Bear with us 1 second through the transition. We're going to bring up your slides and a small camera of you. Just give us 1 minute.
No, cool. Yeah, so thanks again for having me. And it's really cool to see what you guys are doing over there in New York City. You know, I'm originally an East Coaster, but now out here in Monterey, California, where the water is cold. I went for a dive yesterday and it was 45 degrees. So after about an hour and 20 minutes, that gets pretty cold. So, but yeah, I just, like Meredith said, I just wanted to share some of my work with you and kind of tell you guys some about some of the amazing, fascinating things that the ocean has. Do I have screens up yet?
Your screen is up. You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so a lot of the work I do is with scientists, and as an underwater photographer, this is generally kind of what my office looks like. It's a pretty nice place, and I'm really fortunate that I get to spend time with a lot of really amazing animals. So this was, like Meredith was saying, sharks are really incredible. And here we have, we're like 300 miles off the coast of Mexico. And this was a bait ball that we saw. So all these sharks and tuna are feeding on those smaller fish. And here you see a lot of animals, but there was well over 1,000 predators. So I have one picture with like 580 animals. And the reason you want to document these is because they used to be fairly common in the oceans, but as we continue to fish and continue to put pressure on these oceans, we start to lose these big aggregations of fish. And you get to see really cool events. Like this is in 2015, the oceans were considerably warmer off California. And part of a El Nino, it's a normal event, but as climate change continues to happen, these normal events are becoming more and more frequent, and really driving the ocean temperatures. You're having a lot of changing in the environment. And so here, a sea lion would never typically eat this mola mola. And Meredith just said that the whale shark was the biggest fish in the ocean, but these guys, so those guys are cartilaginous. They're sharks, they don't have bones. But this is the largest bony fish in the ocean, so it can get up to be about 15 feet long. This guy's a little bit smaller, but it was pretty rare. These guys wouldn't typically eat them, but because there were so many sea lions and, you know, with all the food availability because of the warm water having moved north, there was no food for these sea lions to eat, so there was like over 100,000 of them that were washing up. The sea lions were washing up on the beaches, sick and malnourished. So I found this guy, and he was actually eating the inside of this mola mola here. I've been fortunate. I got to go to Cuba, and I've always said that if there was two animals I never wanted to swim with, and one of them was giant Humboldt squid and crocodiles. And just because I don't know anything about crocodiles or Humboldt squid, and everyone to go to Cuba, you know, there are a lot, it's a nice experience. They have animals there that they, you know, have worked with over the years. They, you know, throw them some chicken here and there, and they're kind of more like pets. But I was there working with a group of scientists, and we found some that weren't pets, and they weren't as nice. So I still don't want to swim with them again. And here, you know, I just wanted, you know, show people that the underwater world can be snow-like. It can be very beautiful. This is Atlantic sea nettle down in the Caribbean. I've done a lot of work with sea turtles, and I'll hit on that in a moment. But as Meredith said, I used to work in science quite a bit, and a lot of that work was with sea turtles. And here's some Pacific bluefin off the coast of Mexico. These are like 300-pound fish, and if anyone's ever been to like a NASCAR race, it's kind of like standing in the middle of the Daytona 500 in the middle of those things when they're feeding. And this was a really cool place in Florida. I was doing some work with the Nature Conservancy, and I got to go work with these guys who are trying to bring back the population of sturgeons. Sturgeons are really old dinosaur-like fish, and they've had a lot of conservation problems over the years because their eggs are caviar. So a lot of people around the world love to eat caviar, and they've been harvested. And these guys are being pretty successful in being able to bring them back. But this is the river that they live in this section, and this is also a critically endangered habitat. So a lot of times when you see one part of the ecosystem fail, you start to see some other parts fail. And this is a really cool animal. It's called a mantis shrimp. It's the fastest striking animal in the whole animal kingdom. And it's got these little, you can see in the front, it's got these little appendages that they can snap really fast, and they can either punch things, they're called smashers, or there are also ones with little spears on the end, spears or splitters. And they have like the strike speed of like a bullet. So they strike so fast in the water, it actually boils the water. And they have these incredibly complex eyes that can see like 16 parts of the color spectrum as opposed to humans where we can only see 3. And here's a blue whale, which happens to be the largest animal that's ever lived on the planet. And to give you some perspective, Meredith was just talking about whale sharks, and they're about 40,000 pounds. And this guy's about 10 whale sharks, or they can get up to about that size, so about 400,000 pounds. The largest specimen ever found was 107 feet long. So, and some recent science has come out and shown that they just keep growing and growing and growing, but they're kind of bottlenecked at about 107 feet, because once they get any bigger, they open their mouth to feed on prey, and it's so big, it slows them down. It's just no longer, it's no longer good for them to be that big, because they're having trouble catching prey because their mouth is so big. And so when a lot of times when I tell people kind of the work that I do, they say, oh man, that's so glamorous and that's such a wonderful lifestyle. And, sometimes it is. I'm fortunate to say that I've been able to work on some, a yacht here in the Caribbean, 150-foot yacht with a helicopter pad, and it's absolutely incredible. But most of the work that I do, I spend on little boats like this. This is a little boat off the coast of Chile. And I was down there working with some sword fishermen, researchers, and this boat we spent 2 weeks on has no kitchen, has no shower, it has no bathroom, and the living quarters were a little different. And this is the bottom of the boat that they just threw an extra mattress in so that the three of us could stay in it, and then there was 2 other people sleeping in the room. So this is how I slept for 2 weeks, 3 of us sharing this little bed. But it's amazing because you get to see a lot of really incredible things. So that work that I was doing down in Chile with swordfish, this is a pictograph that was written in the mountains over 2,000 years ago, and it's, if you can see it in the top right of it, that's depicts a little boat that these guys used to make little boats out of seal fur, and they would go out to sea all by themselves or a few boats, and they would harpoon swordfish, they would harpoon whales, and they would get dragged all over the place in these little boats. So it's amazing that you get to be part of these cultures. You get to see a little bit into the past and how people used to do it. And I, being from the East Coast in the mountains, this is kind of my experience with water. When it was hot in the summer, we filled up the yard pool, or we got an occasional trip to the beach. So I wasn't like Meredith. I didn't grow up close to the ocean. I wasn't diving by the time I was 10. I actually grew up playing a lot of sports, and I was fortunate enough to play sports in college and a few years professionally afterwards. And I ended up playing for a team in Australia where I first got to dive. And the plan is that after the sports career was over, that I was going to go back to, I was going to come home, go to medical school. But after I was diving, I quickly realized that at the heart of all conservation issues is really a human issue. If you can help humans, you can help save the planet in the same time. And I kind of thought the office was a little better than the hospital. So I actually moved to San Diego. That's where I met Meredith. That's part of her arm right there in the blue on the left. And I worked for a group called Sea Camp San Diego because I literally knew nothing about the ocean. I knew absolutely nothing. I moved there and Meredith knew everything, and she was like my hero. So it was a really great crash course. After working there for a season, I took an opportunity. I moved down to a remote jungle in Costa Rica where you can only get there by boat through the canals. You go for a couple hours and you end up in this little place called Tortuguero. And it's I worked there for 3 months working with green sea turtles. That's pictured there. And largest, probably the second largest nesting beach in the world. The other one for green turtles, the other one being in Rain Island off Australia. And when I came back, I knew that I needed to go to graduate school, but I didn't have any experience, So when I talked to people at admissions at Scripps, they just basically said, "Hey, you look like a kid that's super lost after playing sports for a while, so go get some experience." So that's kind of what I was doing. After I moved back from Costa Rica, I worked in a slew of different jobs with fisheries and such. And finally, I got into a place called Scripps Institution of Oceanography in San Diego. And I was really interested, after all the traveling and work that I'd done, I was really interested in how you can give these communities power, say. So this happens to be an example I was working on down in Mexico, where that wave that you see is endangered because they were going to build a big lagoon there. I mean, build a big harbor there inside of a lagoon, which would not only destroy a ton of really great habitat for sea turtles and nesting sea turtles and birds and crocodiles and all those things, but it was also going to ruin a wave. And so I figured that if you could put an economic value to the wave, hopefully you could rally the troops and garner the support to save the wave. And it turns out that that wave generates about close to $10 million a year annually. And that was enough to make people think, hey, maybe this place is worth saving. We got a bunch of NGOs involved and some rock star surfers, and it's still protected to this day. So that was in 2013. So that's pretty good. And at Scripps, which is really cool, was the first time I ever did any deep sea stuff. You know, so I was out on a boat and they were trawling nets down to do collections. And the animal on the left is the phronema. It's not too big. It's a couple inches tall, but a lot of people say it was the inspiration for this guy here on the right, the alien creature from the movie The Alien. And I think, you know, a lot of people draw a lot of inspiration from the oceans. And at that time in my life, I was, and still today, I mean, I'm still really inspired by the things you see. There's a lot of parts of the ocean we don't know about. You know, people are finding new species all the time and really amazing stuff. But I actually left school. And at that time, after I was done with graduate school, I still was just kind of getting a camera. I was just playing with it. I didn't really use it much. It was one my brother gave me. I moved back down to the jungle in Costa Rica, and I was running the program down there, where I started on top of doing our normal work. I started using a camera a little bit. And this is a picture of a researcher, actually my wife, who moved down there as well. And this is, you know, we're down there collecting biometric data, trying to figure out how healthy the turtles are, how many of them there are, would attach satellite transmitters to try to figure out where they're going. Most of them are doing similar routes, you know, to foraging grounds and returning to nest. But occasionally, you know, we tag a leatherback, and it swam up Panama, turned on a dime, and swam straight to West Africa. So these satellite tags give us some really good data on movement. And that's really important. You'll see it in a couple of different stories that I've shown. And basically the thought of, you know, if you can't understand where an animal's going or how it's using the ocean, it's really hard to protect it. So when I left that job, I was unemployed. So I decided that I thought it might be a good time to look into using photography as a tool to help raise awareness. I figured if I could do it for a year and pay the bills, I would do it another year and just continue to do it like that. But when Meredith earlier said that I was a photojournalist, a lot of people know what a photographer is, but a photojournalist is more specifically looking at stories. So you would go out and collect images, not of just the beautiful stuff, but to kind of tell people what was going on. And this is just a small example of something I did for the Washington Post. This is the first federally funded aquaculture farm in the United States. We're behind the world in a lot of this, and as the world grows, we need more and more seafood, or more and more protein in general. So the U.S. is finally opening up some of those areas to be farmed in the ocean. But there's a lot of pushback from people, and especially lobbyists and in Washington, D.C. So these guys really in Washington, they really wanted this story to be told about how sustainable it was and how successful it could be in Washington, D.C. So the Washington Post picked it up. And, you know, this is the front page of the Washington Post. We were able to get the story on the front, and therefore they were able to get some more funding there for that project. So photography has a really great ability to reach the masses. You know, I could tell you how beautiful a place is, but until you see a picture, you might not really know, right? So, and we'll just hit the sharks real quick, because I know Meredith will say I have to do stuff on sharks. And that's the first question kids always ask us, if we see a lot of sharks. And I've spent a lot of time with sharks, and they are fascinating animals. And they're actually in a lot of trouble around the world. We've lost, I think, 90% of our sharks in the oceans from overfishing. These blue sharks are one of the most caught sharks in the world, because they live all over the world. And but they're fascinating creatures. They can feed down at 100 or 1,200 feet. They can feed at the surface. They travel like 70 miles a day. They're really incredible. In San Diego, we had a lot of leopard sharks, and they're all females, and they're all using one really small area, and they aggregate, and they're all pregnant, and they're all in this really small area that there's some, they believe that there may be some tectonic activity there that could be helping with their gestation of their pups, or it's also like lower waves impacts. So, but again, it's not fully understood. I was fortunate I got to do that work down in Cuba with scientists, and Cuba is a really unique place, because they protected a lot of their animals for a really long time, since Fidel Castro, who was super into the ocean diving. And so if you look at the Caribbean, that expedition I did in the Caribbean on the yacht, I was there for 3 weeks, and I saw more sharks in one dive in Cuba than I saw in 3 weeks in the rest of the Caribbean. So really special place, and you try to get the word out and show people that, like, hey, you know, if you save if you protect these things, they'll reproduce. We can have a lot of them, and it has a lot of benefits, not only for Cuba's tourism, but also for the ecosystem as well. And another little shark story I've been working on is in California. So the California white shark, that's a great white shark. It's juvenile. It's probably a 7-footer, 8-footer. Is one of the coolest success stories that in the world, really. You have one of the apex predators that the numbers were pretty low, but over the years, we've had a suite of environmental protection laws that have helped them, between the Clean Water Act, saving the marine mammals, so they have something to feed on. But with that, you have a lot more sharks, and that can sometimes cause issues for humans. So like here, this is off of Santa Cruz. It's a little area off Capitola that's, you can go there, and there'll be 24 of these sharks swimming around right in the surf where people are swimming. And so it's really great that the sharks are back, but you also have to do a lot of work to inform the public on some of the risks, right? So this is Chris Lowe's lab out of Long Beach. They've caught one of these juvenile white sharks, and they're equipping it with tags. They caught this one right up on the beach. It was in about 2 feet of water. There was 2 of them there, and they attached these little tags in them, and then you can track them in real time where they are. So if there's 5 of them around this beach, then you know, lifeguards can go to that beach, put up signs, say, hey, guys, just be careful. You know, don't leave your kids unattended, such. So, and this is another shark that I ran across. This is a really deep living shark. It's generally during the day, down around 1,500 feet. It's a big eye thresher shark. They're fascinating. This is about a 12-foot shark. Half of the length is in the tail that they use, that they slap prey with. And it gets his name Big Eyes because he has these really, really large eyes on the top of his head, so he can hunt really efficiently down deep. And then this is a super cool fish. This is like 150-pound opa, or some people call them moonfish. And it's when I got this picture, was in 2014, I think, and a study was just coming out that happened to show that, you know, fish are cold-blooded, so their blood is the temperature of the water around them. And these guys live deep. They live, 400, 500. They're mesopelagic, so they live between 300 and 1,000 feet, and they chase squid. So squid are quick, and they have that large beak on the front of their mouth to catch them. But in order for them to be able to hunt fast down there, they have to be able to have some warm blood in them to keep them moving fast. So they have what's called full body endothermy, so they're able to generate heat, which allows them to be more efficient predators. And some of the sharks and tuna have it as well, like localized in the different muscles. But these guys have it all over their body, and they're really fascinating. I did some work with those guys, catching them, placing satellite tags on them, because they happen to be also a very delicious fish that people love to eat. But if we don't know anything about them, so if you don't know anything about them, how can you regulate how much people eat? So the science kind of drives the policy, and this work is kind of used to inform policymakers. And as I mentioned earlier, I have done a lot of work with sea turtles. So when I moved back from Costa Rica to San Diego, I figured it would be a pretty easy way to fill the gap by teaming up with some old friends in San Diego that were studying sea turtles. And a lot of people know sea turtle stuff from, say, Hawaii, where they'll come lay on the beach and they're everywhere. And when I spend time in Hawaii, you can swim off the beach and see them within five seconds, easy. California, it's a little bit of a different situation. Historically, they've been there, and then around World War II, people stopped seeing them, and that's because these animals migrate between Southern California and Mexico. And in Mexico, they had opened up. There was a lot of harvesting of the sea turtle eggs, and then on the U.S. side, there was a lot of fishing effort with big nets that were catching them. So the two countries came together, enacted some laws, did set up some conservation programs, and in the 1980s they started watching some of that conservation effort come back, right? So this is where they live in San Diego. They're in the back bay of San Diego, so there's millions of people living here. There's Navy ships, there's all sorts of recreational boats, and if they can live there, they can make it anywhere. And you wonder, why would they pick this place, right? So why, of all the places they could be, why are they spending time in the back bay of San Diego? Well, in the back bay of San Diego, there actually used to be a power plant. This is a picture taken off of Long Beach because the power plant in San Diego was decommissioned. And these turtles have now moved up to Long Beach in the San Gabriel River. And the water that's used to cool these power plants, so basically they suck in water from the ocean, circulates all over the power plants, cools them down, and when the water comes out, it's really warm. And where it flows out, they call it the jacuzzi, because all these turtles would just sit there riding the jacuzzi. So you would have, when you go there, you can see multiple turtles just kind of bobbling in this warm water outflow. And you would wonder, why do they want warm water? Well, as Meredith said earlier, Southern California water is typically colder than, say, right, it's colder than Mexico down south. And these guys use the water to basically stay warm so they don't have to, quote unquote, hibernate, and they can stay active and feed. So they found through studying them, by catching them and measuring them, that they grow at twice the rate of any other turtle at the same latitude. So it's really beneficial for them to be in this warmer water areas. And so once the scientists have them, this is all federally permitted work through NOAA, and they bring them on shore, and they put them in these little boxes. They cover their eyes. They pretty much just rest, kind of go to sleep until they're ready to work with them. They do a lot of lab work. So they're testing for like trace metals because it's a heavy industrial area. They attach, and so this is a skin grab, or just the algae grab there, so they can test it to see what kind of metals are in the water and what their general health. And then they'll attach a satellite transmitter, but in the winter when it's cold, the glue doesn't set real well. So here they are using, I think, his daughter's hair dryer. But in San Diego, where you used to not be able to see any turtles, now you can see 2 turtles at the same time in one small area off La Jolla. You can see there'll be 4 or 5 of them pretty much throughout the year. And that was the early turtle work I did. But I think of California as, you know, you have this really cool success story like the green turtles. And this next story is kind of like we don't know what's going to happen. I was doing a lot of work offshore with some sword fishermen, and we looked around and there was thousands and thousands of these little baby turtles that are generally in Mexico. And it's around the same time all that really, really warm water was pushed up north. And so this is them floating at the surface. And like I said, this was going for miles. So I called my friends at NOAA and asked them what they knew about it. And they said they had just heard of some, and they actually had one that was cold stunned and washed up on the beach. The government, the lifeguards, I believe, or Coast Guard picked it up, gave it back to them. We took it offshore, and this is the first tagged loggerhead. Her name was Coco, and actually I think it was a boy, Coco. And then so what they did was they attach these little satellite transmitters, because if these guys are going to start showing up more regularly, you want to figure out what kind of water, what kind of habitat they're using, because off California we have a lot of fishing effort, and these guys are all federally endangered species, so you want to protect them and just gather as much information as possible. And then, so this gives you a sense of how small this guy really is, right? And they call them the dinner plates. And then here is a picture of a leatherback sea turtle. So this is the third. So the greens were, we'd say, a success story. The loggerheads, we don't know how it's going to turn out yet. And then this is the leatherback. This is the largest sea turtle in the world, and get up like 2,000 pounds. It's 8 or 9 feet long. And this is a scientist, Dr. Benson, who just caught one and has brought it on his modified ship to work it up, right? So these turtles are all from Indonesia. So these guys have traveled 6,000 miles to the coast of California, because at that time of the year, the coast of California is absolutely packed with these stinging sea nettles. And so they just eat these. They get really very highly caloric, then they can make their migration back. So Dr. Benson has this really cool boat that he has modified in a way that we can catch them in these nets and then bring them up through the front of the boat on deck. And these, like I said, this animal's, 800 pounds or something like that. So you have to, it's not an easy animal to catch, and it's not an easy animal to work with. So they've come up with a really genius way to tag these animals. This is one of the little satellite transmitters. A lot of this work is helping inform fishermen, government agencies, because there's a lot of fishing effort here, like I said, and these guys are pretty prone to being caught in crab traps. So if the more animals they tag, the longer they know who's around, what's there, and then they can say, hey, fishermen, these guys, the turtles are using this area, or so don't fish over there, or hey, they've all left, put all the gear in you want, stuff like that. Here he is on the deck. So like I said, this is, I think, like an 800 pounder. He's not as big as they get. And then once they release it, then, like I said, they can give some really cool informed studies. But these turtles are absolutely incredible. I mean, they've adapted in ways that allows them to dive down thousands of feet. Their lungs collapse. They're able to store air in their throat, so they have more oxygen available to them. And then another story that I've recently been working on in California is about kelp. So I don't know how many of you guys know about kelp. Yeah, you have some kelp species in New York, but not this species here. This is a giant kelp. This is a species that can grow to be almost 200 feet tall. In ideal growing conditions, it grows 2 feet a day. So it's a really amazing type of kelp. Kelp is just a type of brown algae, but they grow in these huge mats. So this is a couple acres easy. And the understory of it, it kind of looks like this. So it's a 3D forest, and they happen in all the temperate seas around the world. And right now we're having a massive kelp crisis. A lot of people have heard about the coral reef crisis that's happening, where we're losing coral reef. But California, starting in 2014, lost 95% of all of its kelp in Northern California. So it's one of the best places in the world for this type of kelp. And there's over 300 miles of coastline that has no kelp left. And a lot of people, the kelp is home to a lot of really important animals. And the thing about kelp is that if you don't have kelp, then you don't have a place for fish to live. You don't have, this is I threw this in for you shark lovers. This is a mermaid's purse. This is a swell shark egg attached in there. If you don't believe me, there's a shark. You can see it right there. But these are really important homes for a lot of different species. And if we don't protect them, if they don't have a home, then we lose a lot of the function of this ecosystem. And kelp forests are one of the most biodiverse hotspots in the world. I mean, you have thousands of different species living in it. And here's a pair of California sheephead. This is a male in with the red and black, and this is a female in his harem, and they're doing a courtship dance, and it only happens like in this kelp forest. And these kelp forests that grow so tall are all held up by these little air bladders. But they're like trees in the sense that they provide trees like a structure, but they don't have true roots. So they have a holdfast that holds onto a rock, and they're kind of brittle, right? So here you can see the holdfasts that are on the rock. But starting about 2014, we had 2013, we had what was called the sea star wasting disease. So we lost all of our sea stars. And one in particular is the sunflower sea star. It's a predator of sea urchins. So those sea stars run around and they eat a lot of the sea urchins. The next year we had the blob, which was a lot of warm water hit the coast, and kelp doesn't thrive in the warm water, so it started to wilt and not do really well. And then at the same time, we also had really good recruitment for sea urchins. So there was more and more sea urchins and less kelp. And so anytime a baby kelp tries to hit the surface and grow, there's just more and more sea urchins there to eat it. And sea urchins are amazing creatures. They can, some studies have suggested they can go 5 years without eating, but they're also capable of bringing in nutrients through their skin. They're really beautiful animals, but left unchecked, and the balance gets out of whack, they start to eat everything. And this is the mouth of one. It's called an Aristotle's lantern. They have these really sharp teeth that they can go around and eat everything. So first they'll eat all the kelp and the algae. Then they start eating coral. They'll now that the numbers are so high and they're so dense, they're eating each other. And this is what the coast of 300 miles looks like, is just nothing but sea urchins and no kelp. So hasn't been good for fisheries. A lot of fisheries are collapsing. A lot of other animals like the really valuable abalone or endangered abalone, depending on where you are, rely on that kelp to eat. So they're disappearing. And the people of Northern California are in a really hard place. So how do you get rid of hundreds of miles of urchins? And so off Mendocino, some people have taken it in that they have these large groups of thousands of volunteers that go out there and smash them. And they're trying to protect certain places. So they have these little hot spots, these really amazing places to have kelp. And then hopefully if the ocean, like this year, it looks like it's getting colder again. So maybe it'll be better growing conditions for kelp. And they're hoping that if they save some of the spaces, at least they have an area to have kelp that can reseed the rest of the coast. And the group I was working on this for the Nature Conservancy, and they partnered with some people that we don't typically eat purple urchin because it has a lower yield than the uni, the type of food that comes out of it. And these guys have come up with a really cool system that you basically pull them out of the wild, and since they're all starving, they have no uni in them, and then you feed them a bunch of little algae pellets, and then they get a whole bunch of uni in them, about 20% body weight, and that can be used. So hopefully they're trying to create a market that we can eat our way through this, because if we want to get rid of them, it's got to be a large scale process. And now boats are being equipped with vacuums. They can go out and try to suck up as many as they can. But again, you're talking about hundreds of miles, so it's quite the gigantic effort. And because of there's no kelp, there's also that whole industry has been hit with because there's no kelp, there's no tourism diving, and there's no abalone fishing. So they're losing about $40 million a year to just like one local economy on not having diving. So this is the owner of the last dive shop in the area. It's been there since the 70s, and it's a really famous one. This is the last day. He's holding the sun, and you see the walls are bare, and they're just, everything's having to close up shop. So I think it's really important to remember not only is losing things in the environment like really bad for the environment, but it's also like in the human's best interest to save places, right? So if we have kelp forests or we have forests on land, we have a place to go do activities. We can go scuba diving there, we can go hiking there. But not only that, they provide a lot of ecosystem services in the sense that they sequester carbon, you know, they help climate change. That's so when we're losing these things, we got to remember it's not just we're losing kelp or we're losing forests, but it's ultimately not good for us. And then one other little part of a story I want to share with you is every winter I migrate to the island of Maui in Hawaii to work with a group of scientists from called Whale Trust, and the whales all migrate there. None of them stay there year round. Those are the warm water calving grounds. So all these animals come down to give birth. So this is part of the team I work with. On the right, that's Jim Darling. In the middle is Megan Jones, and on the left is a PhD student, Haley. And so Jim, basically in 1970s, was interested in whales, showed up in Maui, loved to surf, and figured, holy cow, this place is amazing, right? And at the time, there wasn't a ton of humpback whales. You got to remember that, you know, we were still coming off whaling years, so there was, I don't know, like maybe a couple thousand that visit the islands, and now today there's probably 20 to 30,000 that visit the islands. So it's been a huge success, and over Jim's time there, he early on, you could see in the bottom right there's a little hydrophone. He's got headphones on. He's listening to whales, the whales that are there singing, and it's a beautiful little island. You know, it's not a bad place to call home for winter. And this is one of the other guys that wasn't in the picture that I work with. His name is Flip Nickland. He's an absolute legend of underwater photographer. He's an early pioneer. He worked for National Geographic for 30 years, and most of the early whale stories were done by Flip. And when I started there in 2015, we started what was whale school, what we call whale school, and it's been pretty awesome. He says he's trying to teach me what he learned in 30 years in 5 years. So that's a lot of work, but we're gonna. And it's a nice place to, you know, have an early morning commute. We get up every morning. You know, I'm there for say 90 days. We go down to the harbor almost every day. Maybe we get out 40 or 50 days. Some days the weather's too bad. But all these whales we know are from different places in the world. And how can we tell where they're from? And the early work that Jim did was people were taking pictures of whale tails and saying, hey, these things are pretty unique, and they're probably like fingerprints. Every human has a unique fingerprint. Well, it turns out that all humpback whales have different tails. So if you take a picture of a tail, and in this one you can see how it has all those scratches on the right side, and you can not only tell who it is, but some of the encounters that he's had. So this was either some sort of bite mark of an orca or a pseudo false killer whale. And you know, there's a variety of different tails. This one on the right, you can also see where they've had entanglement scars or where they've been hit by a boat. It's so you can get a lot of information from that alone, right? So then they were able to take these pictures and they were matching them with some people working in Alaska, and it gives you an idea of where they're migrating to and from. Here's one on the right side. It looks like it got in some sort of entanglement or maybe caught a propeller at some point. And so these are just, you know, some different examples of them. But all these whales have come down here to meet, right? So the males and the females, you can tell there the different coloration of them. The male is on the left there because he's a lot more, his skin's a lot darker. You could tell that he's been interacting with other males, so other males will compete with other males, and their skin sloughs off a lot more. So you can kind of, it's not 100%, but you can get a pretty good idea who you're looking at. So they're all down there to meet. This is a male and a female. Then this is kind of like a dancing ritual. We found them a little ways offshore, and they were both just in this like really beautiful dance for 20-30 minutes. They were swimming back and forth, the male underneath the female, blowing bubbles. And then the ultimate objective is to have a calf. So it's this is a cow, a mom, a calf, the baby, and an escort, the male. And the escort doesn't necessarily have to be the dad. You know, the female could have had a calf on her way in or whatever, but he's as an escort, he's, you know, trying to protect her and hopefully get access to, you know, to be a father. And so, but as you're down there, you get some really unique looks. Like this is, you can see the white stuff in the water there. That's milk. You have to work a lot. You know, I mean, I'd say Flip, the guy I work with, has a famous saying that if we go out 100 days, you get 60 days on the water, but all the really good stuff comes from 4 hours. You know, I mean, you spend a lot of time out there and you're learning a lot, but photographically, it's most whales, when you get in the water, swim away from you. You know, so all the work we do is under a federal permit. You can't just go out and swim with whales. But if you go try to get in the water, you know, they may come up to under your boat and be really curious. But the second you get in the water, a lot of times they just swim away. So the mothers will care for these guys for you know, some time, couple months. We have them documented in the islands before they have to make that migration north, right? So she's feeding the calf like between 60 and 100 gallons of milk a day. And mom's not feeding. All these animals that are down there aren't feeding because there's no productive waters. And so this is a calf, even though it looks large, on the nose of mom. So this is a young calf. It's not a great swimmer. The calf's needing to rest. And this is kind of, we do a lot of work with drones just because it really gives you a better view of whales. You know, whales aren't always all tightly bunched together like they are in Maui. A lot of times they're all over the place. Maybe it's just one or two of them. So when they're all together, it gives you a really unique opportunity to study them. But they only spend like, I don't know, 2% of their lives at the surface. You know, most of the time they're underwater. So when they're at the surface, you really want to maximize what you see. And drones, anything in the air, but drones in particular, have really opened those windows. And then, so this is a view of it underwater. So this calf is just catching a ride on mom's nose and is kind of learning the ropes. But some new work has suggested that the reason calves breach a whole lot is because it helps them really build hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is in your blood, and that's what carries oxygen. So this animal is going to have to migrate thousands of miles north against the current. It's going to be really hard. So it's in its best, you know, it's really good for them to practice, right? It's like exercising in sports. So if you want to be able to play basketball all day long, you go outside and you run a lot, so you're really fit. So they like to jump a lot, and moms like to jump a lot. And a lot of times people say, oh, you know, and earlier I was mentioning it just 1 second ago. Oh, I lost my screen here. Can you guys still see that? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. They say, oh, you're out there all day, you know, 40 days, you must get really great stuff. And this is a picture I got this year. And we had been studying, you know, we tend to study what we call boring whales. You know, a lot of people like the jumpers, all the acrobatic stuff. They're very charismatic marine megafauna. And that's why a lot of people love humpbacks. But we study the boring ones that are just sitting down, holding their breath, or they're down singing, and they're not moving. They stay underwater for 30 minutes of time, up to like 45 minutes. But I just like to show this clip here because that picture came from this. So we were working with those animals, and then they were being really, really, really boring, and they didn't do anything for a really long time. And that 7 second, they breached for like, right when we left them, we were studying another group right next to them. And then about 2 or 3 minutes later, they started breaching. So all of our great stuff from the day came in 45 seconds, and that's kind of what it looked. But this is these are the whales we study a lot of, are the singers. And early on, they learned in 1979, Flip was tasked with diving deep down below singing whales and taking pictures of them to determine their sex, if they were a boy or girl. And they met an animal. It was the 6th animal of the day, so the letter came up F. They named him Frank, and they then, every animal they've ever seen singing is a male. And this is it down there, and a lot of you guys have heard this song before, and that's kind of what it sounds like, right? So but in the humpback song, we have different themes. So over the course of the year, the song will change, and as they travel around the Pacific, if I meet Meredith over there who sings a different song and we sing both of our songs, we will change our songs based on who we hear, and a simplified version there. So this was an interesting theme that we heard this year. This is one that everyone was calling the Kick Chihuahua, and just have a listen. I think you can hear it. And then another one we heard this year was the creepy clown. And sorry about the picture there; it is a little creepy, but it is a creepy clown laugh. So. So again, that's just some of the song work, and songs plays a massive role in humpback whales. We just don't know what it means, right? So people always say, well, what are they singing about? What are they saying? Like, well, Jim Darling, the scientist, was asked on all the information that we have on humpbacks, scale of 1 to 10, what do we know? And he said way less than 1%. Which is pretty remarkable considering we know a lot about humpbacks compared to other whales, and just kind of shows that we don't know that much yet, right? So if you look at this picture, one thing that's you have a lot of in these breeding grounds is surface active groups, and that's where large groups of animals get together. There's generally, not always, but generally a female in front, and all the males are fighting each other for access to the female. And it can be one animal versus another male, one male versus another male, or it can be like one male with like 40 other males behind it. These groups can go for multiple days, like swim really far distances, And it's not the same animals all the time. There's some new ones coming in, and there's a lot of different alliances of groups working together. And one thing I failed to mention earlier was that animal that was singing, that male, he only sings the males. A lot of times people say, oh, that he's singing, that song is so beautiful, he must be singing to females, but he only sings, and only males only sing, and only males come up to document it, right? So there's a whole lot of documentation of whales singing, another group, another animal coming in known as a joiner, and it's only males. And then they'll swim off, they kind of break up, switch what they're doing, and how that plays out in the whole scheme of reproducing is really hard to say, but it's pretty fascinating. But when these large groups get together, it's pretty amazing. So these animals are blowing bubble. They're all trying to display their dominance. And so how do they do that? In the whale world, bubbles mean a lot. So they blow these long bubble curtains like you can see here, and that kind of shields them. They whack each other. So this is one male hitting another male. And if you think about a 40,000-pound animal smashing into another 40,000-pound animal, there's a lot of damage that can be had. And so this picture here, you can see the front of the, like basically the nose or the snout, the front end of a humpback, and all that red bit and the pink parts is all where he's been hitting so hard on other males that he's busted all of his skin. So Flip and I always say it's pretty funny. They call them the gentle giants of the Pacific because they're capable of quite a bit of damage, but they're actually really curious. And I think that's why a lot of people.
Yeah. 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
And so, but they're really curious, you know, and I think that's why a lot of people fall in love with humpbacks in general. And this is a mom, you know, once mom and the calf's a little bit older, mom starts pushing calf over, and this is a mom pushing the calf directly at me. And so this is how close it is, and that's really close, and it's really fun for pictures. And but you really start to hope that they're as agile as everyone says they are in the water, and they don't smash into you, because it can get a little close. But at the end of the season, they all kind of migrate, and they go back to their homes, which we do as well. And so it's a really amazing time, because you get just this short little window into these magnificent lives of like such amazing animals. And I think if you would have asked me, even at the time I knew Meredith, or, you know, as a kid, if I would spend, you know, the majority of my time in the ocean, I would definitely don't think I would have said yes, you know. So I think it's really important to remember that, like, anything is possible, and you guys are capable of anything. I mean, I never thought, growing up in a little mountain town, I never thought I would live in California, getting to swim with animals I love to swim with. So I really appreciate you guys having me on here, and hope you enjoyed it. And I have any questions, I just put some information up there. If you guys have any other questions, you feel free to reach out. I'm always around.
I think, well, thank you so much. That was fascinating. Fascinating. Every minute of it. I would think we do have some questions for you. So are you cool to answer some questions? I also had a couple for you, but Pat, do you want to?
Yep, I'm going to start in the order that.
A couple? Yeah, great.
Yeah, the order they came in, and there are some that several people asked. Yep. One of the most popular was if you were ever scared while you were taking photographs, and if you were ever injured, bitten by a shark or anything like that. Oh, Ralph, looks like you are muted.
Hang on, Ralph, you're muted.
There we go.
Am I back? Cool.
You're back.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes to both of those. So I have been scared, and I have been bitten by a shark. And everyone always asks about the shark biting, but I think in the beginning I showed that picture of all those animals feeding. And if you go to where they're feeding, be prepared to be part of the equation, you know? So it wasn't by any malicious act, but those are pretty hectic situations. And I mean, as far as being scared, I think, you know, my mom always says, "You're crazy. Why would you swim with those sharks?" And I said, well, I would never jump in an airplane and fly an airplane on my own, right? But I think as long as you spend time with things and understand their behavior, that's one of the reasons I work with scientists a lot too, is that they understand a lot more of the behavior than if I just go jump in the water with a swordfish and I have no idea what it's going to do. It could potentially end very bad, you know. So, and that was where I was coming at with being terrified of crocodiles. Like, I don't know why I have this primal fear of crocodiles, but I'm just yeah, when they stand up at you, it's very dinosaur-like. I don't know. It can be, but for the most part, no. I mean, okay. I'm pretty comfortable in the water.
I know you talked about Cuba, but where can you find the most sharks?
Ooh. I mean, it definitely depends on the species, you know. Like if you're just looking for small, friendly sharks to swim with, like that place I was talking about in San Diego where the leopard sharks are. I mean, there's thousands of them there. You can swim around there, maybe 6 feet. I don't think there's ever been a case of someone. But, you know, those offshore environments at like those tall islands, like the Cocos Islands off of, in the Pacific off of Costa Rica, or where Meredith was talking about where she saw white sharks, any place that you have some sort of structure, the big open ocean, so there's not any structure, they like structure, they'll come to those islands, like those ones I was at. But there's still some really sharky places, you know. I mean, the Bahamas are still pretty sharky.
Okay, do you know what the smallest shark in the world is?
Pygmy shark?
Dwarf pygmy.
Yeah.
Okay.
The size of your hand.
Have you ever seen one?
Oh.
I've seen a dwarf pygmy. They're so cute. They're like the cutest little things. They literally are like, it could sit in your hand. They're awesome.
Ralph, towards the beginning of your presentation, you had a sea lion eating a fish. You know what type of fish that was?
Yeah, it's called a mola mola. So it's a sunfish. It's the world's largest bony fish. So they're really big animals. And that, like I said, that's in Monterey. It's actually really common for sea lions to tear the fins off of those guys and throw them around. And anytime we have high surf, you go down to the beach and there's, I mean, I have a picture with 24 of them in it, you know, laying on the beach. But I think it's more of like a young animal, just young sea lions like getting practice, you know. I don't know how you explain it, but it's more malicious than it is feeding. And down there it was definitely going for its inner guts. It wasn't going for taking his fins off, you know. And those are really hungry, but molas are incredible.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite animal to photograph?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know. I think if I had to pick one favorite animal, it would probably be swordfish, because they're hard, man. You know, like when I was saying, like humpbacks are hard in the sense that, like, you go to some places in the world like Tonga, they've come habituated and you can swim with them easy. Or sharks, you know, you can find friendly ones. But swordfish have this like level of mean to them, and they're hard to find. So if you are trying to find them, there's also a lot of people trying to harvest, you know, fish for them. So you're not going to have a lot of opportunity. You know, these, I mean, they're like the most remarkable fish in the ocean, in my opinion. I mean, they feed down at 1,200 feet. They have enlarged eyes. They have special heaters that go around their brain so they can see. Then they can be at the surface in like a, I don't know, it's like a 15 degrees Celsius change within minutes. Like that's unheard. It's just, they're like the top predator in my mind, I think. But
speaking of top predators, do you know what happened to the big mega sharks, the megalodon? Is that how you say that?
Megalodon?
Yes.
I mean, I know he's not here anymore, and I think it had something to do with the collapse of dinosaurs in general, right? Meredith, do you know?
Yeah, they just became extinct. It's like environmental conditions changed. Their food source was probably depleted and they just became extinct. So for those of you listening, if you've seen the big shark tooth, like they're huge, you can still find fossils of them in oceans around the world. But yeah, they are considered the sort of prehistoric shark that has gone extinct, but pretty cool if you want to look them up. Mm-hmm. And it's megalodon is what it's called.
Megalodon. All right, thank you. Ralph, did you ever get sick on the boat, or any of your colleagues? And if so, how did people overcome that?
So I think I'm pretty fortunate in the sense that I don't get seasickness. I've never had it. I've been in some really, really terrible seas, and I just am really lucky. But a lot of people I work with who I've been on boats with fishermen who fish for their living, and they get really sick. And you can take some medications for it. Unfortunately, it makes you kind of tired. So people just bounce it different ways. I think there's a patch, there's a pill, there's a bracelet you can wear, like a motion sickness bracelet. But I fortunately don't get it, and it's a nasty, nasty thing. I wouldn't want to get it.
And since we have a lot of students in the audience, can you recap how you became a marine biologist? Just a quick summary.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a lot of people reach out and say, like, how do I get to where you went? I'm like, well, there's a lot clearer path than the direction I went. So as I mentioned, in university, I played sports. I played soccer, and I took the opportunity after college to play soccer for a living. But I was pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor. I had always wanted to be a doctor. And then when I was playing for a team in Australia, I got introduced to the ocean. I was like, holy smokes, because I grew up in the mountains. I didn't have it much. And I was just like blown away by how cool it was. And like I said, at the heart of conservation issues is generally just a human issue. So if you work in conservation, you can help humans and you can help the environment while working out in the ocean, which I thought was like mega cool. So just San Diego, but I had no experience. And so that's when I started working with Meredith at Sea Camp. And that was like an amazing crash course. And then after graduate school, I got into graduate school. I worked in sciences. And the first time I was in Costa Rica, that place in Costa Rica is really special because it's the only place in the world that jaguars hunt in packs. So on this 18-mile stretch of beach, we had 24 named jaguars at the time. And I mean, these are like big cats, right? Like they're so powerful. They're the only ones that attack the skull. Like I saw one drag like a 300-pound turtle into a tree. Like these things are incredible. Wow. And I was telling my brother this, who was in photojournalism at the time. And ironically enough, he was phasing out of photojournalism into becoming a doctor in New York City, actually. And but he sent me a camera in the mail with a note that said, prove it. Because I was telling him all about jaguars. He didn't believe me. Like, it was typical brotherly. And so I just had this like extra camera. I was shooting it on the side. It was all in automatic. I didn't know what I was doing. But people like kind of were interested in it because it was a lot of like spiders they had never seen or stuff like that. I mean, I never got a picture of a jaguar, and but it kind of set me on my way. And I had it when I was in graduate school. And I started taking pictures for, like I was saying, this is a beautiful place that they were trying to destroy. I used photos to kind of get the information out on the web, and then when I was down in Costa Rica, I really just started focusing on it. And then, obviously the going underwater with a camera is a whole nother step and a big learning curve, but it was just something I really wanted to do, I mean, I didn't set out to do it, but I think like through the different stages of my career, I've always like found out these new little avenues that are really neat. And for me, like, if I wanted to be a field biologist for the rest of my life, having kids, it would be really difficult because you're gone a lot of times, So where you have to like pick one animal. So I'd only work with turtles, but I loved like sharks and whales and swordfish and all these other. So I figured like with cameras, it's like an amazing passport to go into all these different worlds and have access. Because I could say, hey, I want to tell your story. I want to help you. So it's good for them. And I want to show people how important this stuff is. So it allowed me to have, you know, go see all these really cool places.
And Ralph, so
Awesome.
I mean, really the real thing there is like that you don't need to have anything fancy. You don't need to have a clear, direct path into something. You can kind of find that path along the way, right? Like there's lots of ways to do something. You just have to pick the one that works best for you. We're all kind of making it up as we go along.
Fake it till you make it, man.
That's
You know,
right.
when I like I said, I didn't plan on getting into this. And in the beginning, when I said, like, you guys, like whoever's listening, you can literally do whatever you want to do. Because when I was a kid, I would have never thought that I would have like my dream job where I get to spend time in the ocean, work with really rad people, with really cool animals, and hopefully be doing something good in the world, you know? Like, hopefully we're raising some awareness. Hopefully people are getting interested in trying to change the way they live and do things more sustainably, you know? And there's no way to get here. You know, there's no formula. There probably used to be a little bit before like the internet and social media. But now with social media, you just see how people are like taking it to, you know, I mean, there's wildlife photographers with 6 million followers, and they get it, and how they got there, you know, is there everyone's own path. I think it's a really cool time to be in. I mean, with the internet being so wide, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph,
Great.
do you have any? So, you know, we're in New York City. We've got the largest public school system in the country. We've got over 1 million students. We've got about 100,000 teachers. It's a big place. You know, the thing with, especially talking about the natural world, a lot of times people in New York City, even though there's lots of gorgeous nature around, it can be, you know, it can be harder to access. Not everybody necessarily grows up immediately next to something that they recognize and want to venture out into, because it's just, you know, we live in a giant city. Do you have any, and I think you've touched on a lot of these points so well that it's not like you grew up doing this stuff, and, you know, just for our educators and our students out there, you know, you have any other advice for people, especially knowing that they could be all ages, all different experiences, all different interest levels and areas of interest. Do you have anything that's really resonated with you that's kind of brought you through to where you are today that you'd like to tell people?
Yeah, I think it's just like having, like, if you're naturally a curious person, you know, or you're like looking for some cool things, or you like to adventure, like, I think it's in everyone's backyard. You know, I mean, a guy named Charlie Hamilton James shot a really cool story in New York City on rats. You know, I mean, he hung out in these like wild places, and you guys have wildlife. I mean, you have it everywhere. And, you know, when I first started playing with a camera, I used to walk my dog, and I just had a cheap old camera, so your iPhone or whatever you have. And I used to just like shoot really small macro things. And I mean, when you walk your dog around the same block like 1,000 times a day, you're kind of like, I need to figure out something to do on this thing. So with the camera, a lot of people say, oh, if you have a camera, you're kind of out of the moment, which I think is not necessarily correct, right? Like, because I would then go look under every leaf and say, oh, look at that teeny little bug, or, you know, I mean, there's stuff everywhere. And, you know, especially with the internet now, like, you could go on Google and type in like wildlife in New York City, or there's the Audubon Bird Society, right? So you go in there and say the birds of New York City, and there's apps that literally allow you to go out into your community, and you can see what other people have seen in these places, and you can look and say, holy smokes, we have so much stuff, you know? And I mean, I have 2 small kids, and I don't try to say, hey, you need to be go in the ocean, but like everywhere we go, you know, our little daughter Tallulah will be like, oh my gosh, you hear that woodpecker, or you see that hummingbird? And it's just, I think it's a really interesting way to be like observant in life. You know, not necessarily like just about nature, but you know, you go places and there's a lot of really cool stuff in New York City, man. I mean,
Yeah, there's
it's
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, a matter of like paying attention to where you are, right? Like whatever that is, if it's a city, if it's a forest, it doesn't really matter. It's just if you're interested in something or you are passionate about something, just find the ways to kind of be around it. And I know that's all I've ever tried to do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I think that's really good advice. So not to be scared and to just give things a shot. What's the harm in giving things a shot? You might even end up with a pretty good career over it, right?
Well, I think it's like it's cool too. You know, when I started working with you, I didn't know what a sea hare was, like, which happens, the ones we have out here happen to be the largest slug in the world. I mean, these underwater like beach volleyball slugs that weigh like 30 pounds. I mean, that was like mind blowing to me. Like, so I think first you need to like kind of educate yourself on like what's around, because if you don't know it's there, it's really hard to go look for, you know? And then once you kind of say, oh, wow, I've seen a big slug a lot of times, well, maybe I want to go see a big shark. Or, you know, it's kind of like a progression. A lot of times people come to me and say, hey, I want to shoot stories in Cuba. I want to shoot stories wherever. And I'm like, start in your own backyard, because that's where you can, like, that's why a lot of the turtle work, I mean, I have so much turtle work from California because that's where I've lived and I've worked in it for so long. And I know it really, really well, which is a lot more important than just helicoptering yourself into some place, shooting something from like a quick perspective and leaving, you know? So I tell people in early careers in photography, just find a local organization, you know? I mean, New York City has, I'm sure, a ton of birding organizations if you want to be into birds or insects or whatever, you know? I mean, there are people out there that want to show you these amazing things. You just need to do a little research, educate yourself, and then like it all just, once you learn about one, then you hear about another one. It's like traveling. Once you go to one place, you meet somebody and they say, oh, have you been there? And you're like, no, that sounds fascinating. Then you go, and you think by traveling, the travel bug will leave you, but it actually gets worse. And I find the same with animals, you know? I mean, I never was a self-proclaimed birder in the beginning. I always thought birders were a little crazy, but I think you find out that like all turtle people are crazy, whale people are crazy, shark people are crazy. But crazy. I now find that like I'm trying to put bird names in one ear and I'm afraid fish names are going to be coming out the other ear, you know, because I'm like so fascinated now. I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know that thing was around. You know, it's so cool. So
yeah, New York City's got some incredible environmental organizations. We also have an incredible aquarium here in Coney Island that has a newer shark exhibit. It's incredible. There's a lot of environmental education, a lot of place-based and project-based learning things, not all science and not all nature. There's so many incredible things that really there's a lot to take advantage of, kind of no matter where you are. And I think you know, you've really depicted that well. I just think I speak for everybody when I say, Ralph, it's you know, it always, I love this stuff personally, but it also is just, it's a real shout out to passion. And I think that really there's a lot to be said for something that you're really interested in, just trying to go for it. And just want to say thank you for sharing not only your beautiful images with us and your work, but also your experiences and your stories and kind of like your narrative, because you've got a really great one. And it's just really cool to see all this stuff and to know that you're doing so well. And it's also really good to see you. So just want to say thank you, Ralph, for joining us. And his information is up there on the screen too. So Ralph is on Instagram. Ralph is all over the place. So check him out for sure if you're interested in kind of seeing and learning more. But thank you again, Ralph. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. And yeah, it's great to talk to you again. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, I'm always open. You know, I mean, if that's questions about, you know, like where can I go see something, or where can, if I wanted to get into photography, or, you know, all that stuff, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to answer it.
Thanks, Ralph. And yeah, we'll definitely be talking to you. So thank you again. Miss seeing you.
All right. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Ralph.
Ciao.
And then for everybody else, just want to let you know quickly about a couple of things. We've got this new great thing, what we're calling our intersectional resources. So you can find all of this information on our resource portal. And what this is it's really just laying out something through our, what we're calling our Systems Explorer. So really, it's just meant to kind of discuss sustainability in a variety of different ways. So you can kind of pick the thing you might be interested in, and there's some incredible resources to do exactly what we're trying to do here, which is keep sustainability alive while we're all still at home and beyond. So resources for educators, bring to your classrooms, activities to do with your students, and really just trying to impart some kind of cool, crazy things, activities, lessons, information, and also connections to some of our great other resources through our great partnership network that we have. Also pretty cool is that we feel very hip. We're now also on YouTube, so you can find all of our previous live events have been recorded, and they can now be found on YouTube. So check us out there. The link is right on the screen there. It's a bit.ly, and then it's a SUST YouTube. So check it out. We're excited about that. And then also, for those of you that have heard of the great local organization called Cafeteria Culture, they're beloved partners of ours, very, very dedicated to not only marine and ocean conservation and coastal conservation. They're really great environmental educators and just really a lot of fun. They've created this amazing film that's based on the experiences of PS15. It's actually in Red Hook, Brooklyn. So a local school, go Brooklyn. Microplastic Madness. It's about a little over an hour long. It's an incredible thing that's really focused on the students and the work that they were doing to advocate for less plastic pollution in our oceans. Cafeteria Culture is going to be continuing this conversation, and they're doing a live screening. So check out their website at cafeteriaculture.org. We all strongly recommend that you check this film out and/or screen with your students, or if you are a student, check it out. It is, I can guarantee you that you will enjoy it. Everybody who's seen it, really, really say it's very inspiring, but it's also it's telling it how it is, but in a really incredible way. And you'll learn a lot too, but in a fun way. So just want to say thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with us. I know there's a lot going on right now, and just want to acknowledge all of these things that are going on, not only in our city, in our country, in our world. We really need to deal with all of these issues, and we hope to do this kind of hand in hand with everybody equally together, and look forward to doing that more with you. I hope that you've been inspired to engage in your natural world, whether it's the patch of grass or the tree that you might see from far away from your house, whether it's walking in a park nearby, whether it's getting out to one of our local beaches. There are some incredible things in New York City, in New York State, and we look forward to bringing more of those to you, but really we mostly are looking forward to learning more about this stuff with you. So take care out there. Thank you, and have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.